During the late 70s, after nearly 2 decades of the Cold War, the United States continued to fight communism. At the time, the Soviet Union was the primary enemy of the United States because of its devotion to spreading communism. Tensions were especially high in the Middle East as the Soviets attempted to impose communism in the area. The U.S. felt that it was necessary to take action in countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. The United States' goal was to work with local groups that also opposed communism. As a result, the U.S. found itself allied with Islamic groups throughout the Middle East in a fight to stop the spreading plague of communism. The existing Islamic resistance groups had already established their own movements, so we just provided aid when possible. As we established ties with these fellow enemies of the Soviets, we did not know what lied ahead of us as a nation. In the decades to come, many things would change in the Middle East, which brings us to the beginning of our story. In 1978, the dictatorship in Afghanistan was overthrown by communists. Despite communist success, many Muslim fundamentalists despised communism and therefore began a resistance movement. As the communist factions experienced some internal conflicts, the Muslim fundamentalists gained some steam with their resistance movement. Realizing that this resistance movement could be successful, the CIA decided to fund them. After some time, the U.S. realized that the CIA had little presence in Afghanistan and would need to deal through an ally of some sort. Rather than placing Central Intelligence Agency officers in the field to organize, train, and lead the guerrillas, as Prado states, the Americans dealt with their local allies, Pakistan and its Inter Services Intelligence, or ISI agency. Fortunately for the United States, the ISI had already established ties with the Muslim guerrillas who would hopefully stop the spread of communism. However, the Pakistanis quickly became a problem. The ISI held the power to select which Muslim groups would receive American cash and weapons. Although the groups were not ones the CIA would have preferred, they still experienced success. In the early 90s, the continued success fueled the ISI's ego and eventually caused them to fund an even more radical Muslim fundamentalist group. This group was known as the Taliban. Osama bin Laden was born on March 10, 1957. He was one of 52 children. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, owned the largest construction company in the Saudi kingdom. He was not educated in the West like some of his siblings. He instead stayed at home and joined the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood. During his early life, Osama was influenced by Abdullah Azzam, who believed that jihad was necessary to create an Islamic state. Bin Laden liked this idea because he hated Western influence on his culture. After committing his life to radical Islam, bin Laden began looking for ways to support Muslim fundamentalists. Although Muslim fundamentalist groups were already receiving a great deal of support from the ISI and CIA, they still sought private fundraising. The head of the ISI branch, Mohammed Yousaf, states that the most radical Muslim groups happen to receive the most private funding. This made it possible for wealthy radical Muslims who were willing to support such groups to have a great deal of influence. This was how Osama bin Laden got his foot in the door. Bin Laden supported pan-Islamism, which is the belief that all Muslims should be unified under one Islamic state. After seeing that pan-Islam was possible and that he would receive support, Osama bin Laden created a new group known as Al-Qaeda. This group did not focus on military campaigns, but acts of terrorism. However, the Saudi kingdom feared bin Laden's growing radicalism and tried to quiet him. They even sought U.S. help to quiet his rising movement. This only fueled bin Laden to carry out his new mission. He now vowed that Al-Qaeda would one day rule the world. Due to pressure from the Saudi government, bin Laden was forced to move to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, bin Laden's Al-Qaeda worked closely with the Taliban. The Taliban was the group that ran Afghanistan and controlled most of its territory. The Taliban allowed bin Laden to train and raise Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. As the Islamic group grew in numbers and became adequately trained, bin Laden began to put his plans in action. The first attack by Al-Qaeda occurred on December 29, 1992. The group attempted to kill U.S. troops staying in a hotel in Yemen, but only 2 Austrian tourists were killed. This first attack kicked off a large series of attacks that would span for nearly 2 decades. Other notable attacks that occurred in the 90s include the first bombing of the World Trade Center in February of 1993, as well as a standoff on the streets of Mogadishu, Somalia in October of 1993. The standoff resulted in 2 American helicopters being shot down and dozens of troops left to fight for 16 hours straight until being rescued. This event was depicted in the 2001 film Black Hawk Down. After approximately 17 known attacks and plots for terrorism in the 90s, Al-Qaeda was thriving and Osama bin Laden was very confident. Yet, at the time, bin Laden's name was still unknown by the majority of Americans. This would all change in the next few years.
My fellow citizens, for the last 9 days, the entire world has seen for itself the state of our union, and it is strong. Whether we bring our enemies to justice or bring justice to our enemies, justice will be done.
Almost immediately after the events of 9/11, investigators started to look for clues. They had to examine nearly every piece of evidence that lay in the pile of ruins in Lower Manhattan. President Bush and Secretary of State Colin Powell targeted Osama bin Laden as the prime suspect. As Warren Ritchie stated, this investigation was the most comprehensive criminal investigation ever undertaken. Within the first month of investigating, the United States discovered the Taliban in Afghanistan was providing refuge for bin Laden. Because the Taliban refused to give up bin Laden, a plan to invade Afghanistan was developed. On October 7, 2001, President Bush and British Prime Minister Tony Blair agreed on a joint operation known as Operation Enduring Freedom. This operation's goal was to invade Afghanistan and crush Al-Qaeda. During the battle for Tora Bora in December of 2001, American forces crushed the Taliban and essentially got rid of both the Taliban and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. However, we missed out on a huge opportunity. During the battle, we identified Osama bin Laden's voice giving commands to troops in the mountains of Tora Bora. However, we did not commit the ground forces to pursue him. This error would come back to haunt us for nearly a decade. In the presidential election of 2004, bin Laden once again spoke out to the American people. He was well aware of Bush's desire for revenge, so he advocated for a new president. He told the American people that their safety was not in the hands of Bush, Kerry, or Al-Qaeda, but in their own hands. Bin Laden claimed that if the United States government left Al-Qaeda alone, then the American people would naturally guarantee their own security. Bin Laden's plea was a failure, and President Bush was re-elected. In 2005, the hunt for bin Laden was not looking promising. President Bush was notified of how few resources were being used to find bin Laden. He was shocked by how big of a black hole the war in Iraq had become. Nearly all of U.S. foreign military resources were being used in Iraq. Later that year, the CIA even shut down its unit that had been assigned to finding bin Laden for nearly a decade. The American people began to lose hope that we would ever find bin Laden. On September 10, 2006, 5 years after the 9/11 attacks, CIA officials reported that the trail on bin Laden had gone cold. In fact, they even reported that they had not received a credible lead on bin Laden in over 2 years. For the next 2 years, as the war raged on in the Middle East, American people believed Osama bin Laden had disappeared for good. Nonetheless, in the election of 2008, Barack Obama made a pledge to locate and kill Osama bin Laden. In 2009, in his first year as president, Obama ramped up efforts to locate and kill bin Laden. Both he and the top U.S. commander in Afghanistan believed that bin Laden was a symbol for terror and an icon for groups like Al-Qaeda. In order to truly put an end to Al-Qaeda, bin Laden would need to be captured or killed. According to a Navy SEAL who was part of SEAL Team 6, he and his men had always dreamt of killing or capturing bin Laden. Bin Laden had been the icon of the entire war, and they all wanted justice. The only problem was that the leads were never credible, and no one ever thought it would actually happen. This all changed in 2009. In 2009, Obama received good news in the search for bin Laden. According to United States intelligence, we had identified bin Laden's trusted courier, and we discovered several places of his operation. However, we did not pinpoint his location, and a lot of work still had to be done. A year after identifying the courier, American intelligence finally discovered his exact location. They pinpointed his location to a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Due to the large size of the compound and its high security, American officials concluded it must hold a high-value target. Almost immediately after identifying the compound, the Navy SEALs began to train and rehearse for a raid. They trained in North Carolina, where they rehearsed the raid hundreds of times until it was perfect. Yet, they were still uncertain if the mission would be authorized by the president. After determining that there was a good chance Osama bin Laden was living in the compound, the president decided to hold a series of top-secret National Security Council meetings. These meetings were designed to discuss options for killing or capturing bin Laden. For the next month, Obama was left to decide what to do. On April 29, 2011, just before flying to Alabama to inspect tornado damage, President Obama gave the green light for Operation Neptune Spear. The mission was a go. On May 1, 2011, at approximately 4 p.m. in the United States and 1 a.m. in Pakistan, 4 helicopters carrying 79 Americans leave Jalalabad, Afghanistan, and fly to Abbottabad, Pakistan. When they arrive, one helicopter crashes just inside the outer wall. Luckily, no one is hurt, and the mission proceeds accordingly. As the SEALs regather from the crash, they encounter the first firefight. The shooter was Abu Ahmed al-Kuwati, the man that the CIA had been tracking. He shoots at the Americans from the guest house, but we quickly kill him. The teams of soldiers then proceed to the main building. The SEALs kill the courier's brother inside before he has a chance to shoot. They also kill bin Laden's son, Khalid, after he attempted to lunge at the SEALs. On the 3rd floor, the SEALs reach bin Laden's room. One of the commandos shoots him in the left eye and the chest. Bin Laden's wife is also killed after she lunges at the Americans. Using Geronimo as the code name for bin Laden, the SEALs notify American intel that Geronimo is dead. His body is buried at sea within 12 hours of death. At 11:35 p.m. in the United States, President Obama announces to the world that Osama bin Laden was killed in an American operation.
Yet, as a country, we will never tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. We will be true to the values that make us who we are. And on nights like this one, we can say to those families who have lost loved ones to al-Qaeda's terror, justice has been done.